Remedial instruction in writing. Number 4. Modifications to task demands. Letter A. Increase amount of time allotted for completing written assignments. So here, the time allotted for the students to make assignments is should be sufficient. So an example of this is the policy of DepEd, which is giving assignments in weekends rather than in every day or in Monday to Thursday. So that the students could have sufficient time or more time to create the assignments. Next is letter B. Decrease the length and or complexity of written assignments. So as a teacher, you should decrease the complexity of the assignments, or it should not be that difficult for the students to make the assignments, and the length or how much information should the student gather is must be limited and not as long as 2 to 3 paragraphs. Next is letter C. Have student complete text frames, i.e. partially finished text. So here in letter C is complete text frames, which means that uh, the templates that can be used in making a paper or a written report. So for an example of this is the templates in Canva or any other apps that could be used in making PowerPoints, reports, or presentations of something or any particular jobs or presentation. Next is letter D. Reduce or eliminate copying demands. Teach students abbreviations for note taking. Supply worksheets with math problems from Facebook. So here is to reduce or eliminate copying demands. So teachers must teach the students of the abbreviations that is used to take notes or can be used in order to take note, and supply worksheets for or math problems for the students. So for example, an example of this is the Excel spreadsheet or the Excel in giving a math problems, so that the students have, or I mean, an example of math problems uh, or supply worksheets is is Excel, and abbreviations for taking note, which is the key points of the topic or the main idea of a certain topic that should be taken note instead of the whole meaning of a certain word or topic. Next is letter E. Allow students to use temporary or invented spelling. So you should allow your students to temporarily use invented spelling or temporary spelling. So let it be incorrect or not correct in spelling, so that as long as the students could understand or know what that word is. So spelling is not that important in taking notes. So allow your students to use temporary or invented words as long as they are taking notes, since it could be corrected some other time. Next is letter F. Pre-teach spelling vocabulary for assignments. So as before handling or giving the assignments to your students, uh, teach a pre-teach them a spelling vocabulary or words that they are not familiar with, so that they could use it in making their assignments, or they can incorporate it to the topic that you have given for their assignments. Next is letter G. Evaluate spelling using correct letter sequences. Hopping rather has 8 possible correct letter sentences rather than number of words spelled correctly to measure and reward incremental progress attribute to partial correct spelling. So here in letter G, you could use sequences to correct a spelling. So you could you could check each letter of of the word and give it a point. So every incorrect letter of the word is wrong, and every correct letter is consisting of 1 point. So, for example, is the word analysis. There are 8 letters in them, and the spelling of analysis is ANALYSIS. So, if the students, excuse me, if the students spelled it incorrectly, or they spell it this way, in ANALISES, so the spelling is incorrect, which is the I and the E, which instead the I should be Y and the E should be I. So if the spelling is incorrect, then each letter that has a correct or is the same for the correct spelling is consisting 1 point, and the incorrect is wrong. So that's how you correct or evaluate spelling using correct letter sequences. So next is permit students to dictate written work to scribe. So scribe means in to write or to take note in other terms. So you should permit to dictate the written work of other students so that the other students could gain more information, or to could take note about the information that the other students have gathered, since they don't have similar I since different students have different assignments. If I mean uh, not if they copied the assignment for the other students. So next is letter I. If students have adequately developed keyboarding skills, permit them to write papers with word processor. So here you could if the students have a keyboarding skills, they could use a word processor in creating papers. So for example, in creating a research paper, so students could use the word document and typing or writing the research papers if they have keyboarding skills, or they could use laptops, computers, cell phones, etc., so that it will not be difficult for them to create a papers or write papers. Next is letter J. Permit students to use outlining and semantic mapping software to facilitate planning. So here, students can use the an apps or sites that could give them an outline and semantic mapping for software for to facilitate their planning. So students could use outlining apps or sites that they could use in planning, so that the sequence of their topic, or the sequence of the information that they would like to put in the outlined plan, is not in rumble, or is not in any order. So next is letter K. Permit students to use voice recognition technology to facilitate text transcription. So here, you could also permit your students to use voice recognition technology to facilitate text transcription. So for an example of this is the Google, which it has a mic uh, beside the search button, and you could just voice out your the topic or the word that you want to search. So using technologies or using sites that has a voice recognition they could facilitate the text transcriptions of their written words. Next is the letter L. Permit students to use integrated spell checker and or word prediction software to facilitate spelling. So here, the students could use a sites or apps that could correct their spellings or grammar. So for an example of this is the Grammarly. So uh, it could facilitate the grammar and the spellings of each word or each paragraph or sentences, so that The spelling and the grammar should be correct. I can be corrected and not be incorrect. So Grammarly could help the students to write their papers without without that much effort in racking their brains to know what the correct grammar or correct spelling of that certain word or sentences is. Next is letter M. Permit students to use speech synthesis technology to facilitate revising and editing. So here, the students could use sites or technologies that could synthesize their speech to facilitate the revising and editing of their paper. So uh, synthesis means to I mean which synthesis means to what you call this one, to analyze or to ungroup the paragraphs into sentences. So it could be synthesized so that the revising and editing of the paper could be done easily using the synthesis technology or speech synthesis technology. So next is letter N. Selectively weight grading for content, organization style, and convention. So here should grade the content, organization style, and conventions similarly or fairly. So the weight of each grade should vary on the assignments or the given task to the students, not just because you want it, you don't like it or you don't want it. So let's go to the next one, the next letter O. Grade assignments based on the account of improvement rather than absolute performance. So in grading an assignments, the absolute performance or on how the students make the assignments should not be graded, but the improvement of the gathering of information or the information that they gathered in order to improve the information or the topic that is given. So the improvement of the students in making assignments should be graded, but and not the absolute performance on how they make or how or what process they take in order to create that assignment. Next is letter P. Assign letter assign letter grades for body of work collected over time, portfolio assessment rather than for each paper. So in grading the portfolio or the compiled works of body works of the students, you should grade it by letter, not by number. For example, of the letter gradings is C minus, C plus, B minus, B plus, A minus, and A plus. You could use it to grade the students instead of numbers for each portfolio or the body of the compiled works of the students. Next is letter Q. Provide feedback or content, organization, style, and convention for some rather than all assignments, which may reduce misunderstanding. Reduce students' anxiety about writing. So here, you could provide feedbacks to the students in their content or the organization or style and conventions on how they write their assignments. So you should pinpoint the things that is incorrect or that is needed to be improved rather than the whole assignment itself. So that's how you give feedback. You give feedback not as a whole, but in parts or those things that is needed to be improved. So next is letter R, which is the last letter for the number 4. I provide feedback on targeted aspects of writing rather than all aspects to avoid overwhelming students. So as I said earlier in the letter Q, you should provide feedback not as a whole but as parts or those things that is needed to be improved or yes, those things that is needed to be improved to not overwhelm the students or to not give them anxieties or depression or lack of or to not deteriorate their confidence. So let's go to number 5. Number 5 of the remedial instructions for writing. Modifications to learning task. So under it is only two letters, so let's make it quick. Letter A permits students to dramatize or orally present a written assignment either in lieu of writing or in preparation for writing. So let me just point out the word lieu, which is to in place or instead, which means place or instead rather. So in letter A, you permit your students to dramatize their assignments or their works or orally presented so that the other students could gain information and could take note other information, and they could prepare for writing. Since if you hear if you as a teacher could give feedback to your students so that those things that is needed to be improved could be improved. Next is letter B, the last letter. Assign students suitable roles, brainstorm manager for the creation of a group generated paper. So here you should assign suitable roles for each students in creating for the creation of a group generated paper. So an example of this is research paper. So you as a teacher could give roles to your students, but it is just a suggestion since the students is the one who makes the research paper. So you suggested roles, suitable roles for each student. So for example, the give suitable roles, which is the leader, the vice leader, or the secretary, or and the ones that will type the paper. So the suitable roles that could the students could do, or that is they're capable of. So that's all for number 4 and number 5.